I'm the Director of Mixology and Spirits Education for Southern Wine and Spirits of New York.
Okay. And you were giving a great lecture tonight. What can you summarize that?
I can summarize it. I was just trying to have frankly a damn good time, and in the context of celebrating Parker Beam's 50th anniversary as the master distiller with Heaven Hill, creating a context for the influence of rock and roll on Evan Williams single barrel vintage whiskeys.
What do you think of this whiskey? What do you think of this bourbon?
Well, particularly the 2000, without any pretense, is like nothing I've tasted before. It's exceedingly high proof. If I'm not mistaken, I've just heard this for the first time. I think it's 142 point something. And usually those high proof whiskeys, to me, not in a bad way, but they really go right through the roof of my mouth.
Is that what I'm drinking, 142 proof?
I believe so. I believe so. You'd have to just confirm that for me, because again, this is the first time I've had it as well. But the whiskey is so round, and I think the nose is almost a little vegetal. It's almost mulch-like. And then there's apricot and eucalyptus, as Gary Regan would say. Some really extraordinary flavors and a delightful, delicious long finish. I think it's really extraordinary is an adequate word for it, at worst.
Hey, but you deal with a lot of different spirits other than just bourbon, right?
That's true.
Talk to me a little bit about what you do.
Well, I mean, my passion and expertise is in a lot of the classic cocktail-oriented spirits. So whiskey, certainly, not just bourbon, but Scotch and Irish whiskey. I'm a big fan of rye whiskey in particular, but I also love gin, rum, aged rums, tequila. Authentic spirits with a clear point of view is really what I care to spend time with.
If I wanted to take this single barrel vintage Evan Williams and do it in a classic cocktail, what would you recommend?
Well, you know, I'd have to think about the 2000 vintage, but I think some of the other vintages that I've tasted, you don't want to do too much with it because there's enough character already to it. And particularly with aged bourbons, it's rarer that I would intermingle them in a cocktail. But something that I would say, hopefully not in a blasphemous way, is something like the 99 vintage. I love mixing that with a little bit of aged rum. So a little bit of that dark spice but sweet characteristic, and a little bit of potentially fresh grapefruit or fresh apricot juice, and just a little bit of honey. And it's a very simple style sour that I think doesn't, well, it keeps the respect for the bourbon, the Evan Williams in particular, but does something fun with it. It's not so frivolous, but you can enjoy it.
If you had to say one thing about, you know, the comeback of bourbon that we've seen the last few years, what would you say?
I would say two things. Thank goodness for a young generation being interested and taking the time and developing a palate, much in the same way the development of a food palate has taken place in the United States over the last 15, 20 plus years. But equally, if not more so, gratitude and thanks to, frankly, an older generation that has perpetuated an interest in authentic bourbon, authentic spirits in general. I think far too often, from an outreach, a business, and a marketing standpoint, we forget people, frankly, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, who are extraordinary customers for these products and are equally responsible for their success.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Allen Katz. It's all right, man.
All right. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.